Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you very much to the organisers today. It's great to see so many people here for what I think is a really fascinating and could hardly be more timely topic. I'm going to focus my remarks today on the cyber challenge, but in Q&A I hope we can broaden this out to include some of the things that Nick mentioned, BMD, new precision weapons, and that as well. So, as I'm sure you're aware, in recent months debate has heated up about possible cyber challenge to UK nuclear weapons. But I think it's fair to say that the understanding is still very much in its infancy, with only limited work done on its nature and implications. What is clear to me, though, is that this cyber challenge will impact right across the UK nuclear enterprise, particularly when taken in conjunction with other technological developments. But I think this does vary considerably in its implications, as we'll go into. So first and foremost, cyber is a fundamentally contested term. It means different things to different people, and this often clouds or obfuscates the debate. Personally, I think it's best thought of as involving the command and control of computers, and therefore attempts to disrupt, destroy, deny, degrade or distort the information that these computers, as well as their operators, rely upon, store, process, disseminate and generate. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. Cyber attacks vary enormously in intent, threat and implication. This varies from simple hacking and nuisance through espionage and interference, right up to sabotage and attempts to cause physical destruction. These attacks may be direct or indirect, may be conducted in person, in situ, or remotely over networks. The impact is therefore, in my view, right across the nuclear weapons enterprise, and includes design and operational secrets, attacks on communications, spoofing and early warning, up to attacks that might seek to compromise nuclear weapons, or in a worst case scenario, cause a launch or explosion. These can be thought of as either disabling attacks, i.e. trying to stop something working, or enabling attacks, trying to cause something to happen, i.e. a launch or escalation. The former is more likely to be conducted by a state adversary, the latter by a third party, possibly a terrorist group. While most UK nuclear systems are clearly not connected to the internet in any meaningful way, the submarine, missile, warhead and all the various design and support systems clearly do rely on network computers, complex software, many lines of coding, and each of these have to be designed, written, manufactured, incorporate new information and be regularly upgraded, altered and patched. This means we need to consider new vulnerabilities and challenges for the submarine, multiple systems aboard the submarine, the software that controls the missiles and the warhead, as well as secret design and operational information about all aspects of the submarine, its weapons, and those who operate them. So by far the worst, or the biggest risk, but the worst fear, is that hackers might somehow sabotage the delivery vehicle or the weapons directly, either to cause accidental, unauthorized explosion or launch, or to prevent them working as planned. This would likely, in my view, involve malware introduced during the procurement phase, while the submarine missiles warhead are being built or even designed, or when the submarine is in port for maintenance or software updates. While it might be possible to remotely activate pre-installed malware, and advances in technologies to jump the air gap may become more prevalent in the future, it's more likely that malware be pre-programmed within these different parts of the submarine to activate at a certain time or under certain conditions. An attack from a traditional state-based foe would presumably aim to disable or interfere with key systems on the submarine, perhaps compromising its stealth, the safety and security or working of the reactor, the fire control system, or at least make these systems not work as expected, increasing the risk within them. Again, as I said, terrorists or non-state actors would presumably seek to cause launch or explosion, exacerbate a crisis, or maybe even attack the reactor in some way. Many other systems could be targeted that would cause considerable trouble for the submarine. It's not just the weapons and the missiles themselves. Many of these systems run complex computers and code, and all could theoretically be tampered with too, thus possibly making the submarine have to return to port, a particular problem if the UK were at some point to opt for 3 rather than 4 submarines perhaps. A second concern is that cyber techniques might be used for some sort of interference with nuclear communications. This would perhaps mean either jamming or preventing the exchange of messages, or spoofing them with misleading or incorrect information. Now, given the relatively relaxed status of UK nuclear weapons when on patrol and general posture, such interference is unlikely, I think, to cause major problems during periods of relative peace, but would perhaps become much more acute during times of crisis. Cyber interference could compress the escalation ladder, make it increasingly difficult for all those involved to understand what was going on, particularly if combined with denial of service attacks. And while the risk is far greater for states with highly alerted forces, the US and Russia being most obvious, the chance of miscalculation, misperception or unauthorised use due to spoofing remains a possibility, although perhaps a fairly distant one. There is evidence that hackers have attempted to compromise the extremely low frequency formerly used by the US Navy to communicate with nuclear-armed submarines, and I think we should probably assume that this has been tried against the UK forces as well. Maybe others in the room know more about this than I do. Finally, perhaps the least sexy, but possibly the most important challenge, is the possibility that sensitive design or operational secrets might be stolen through cyber espionage. This would include details of the submarine. I would guess most likely its stealth, its key systems, the missile, its warhead, perhaps even its general areas of patrol. I'm not sure how this data is stored, or what's been mapped, or how we can find out what has been mapped and where the submarine might patrol. A lot of this information is stored on computers and is therefore susceptible. Not necessarily a new question, but certainly a new vector and a new challenge for this information. In theory, this could compromise the invulnerability of the submarine. It might allow adversaries to develop better countermeasures, anti-missile defences, or as perhaps we're going to look at in a lot more detail today, better anti-submarine warfare techniques, or even map out these systems for future attack. Again, the past is littered with examples to steal secrets in this way, including against contractors involved in building the new successor submarine. Defence laboratories and contractors in the US involved with manufacturing and maintaining the Trident missile and its software have also been targeted. And I think one must assume that the atomic weapons establishment also remains a key target for those seeking information on these systems. Finally, just in summary, in my view, we're moving to a much more complex and potentially more challenging nuclear environment. Cyber is an increasingly important part of this, but by no means the only part of this. Cyber will impact all aspects of UK nuclear weapons management, from C2 through nuclear secrets up to strategy and even how we think about global order. The challenge is, however, diverse, as I've tried to say in these few short words, and ranges across a spectrum with very different implications. The cyber challenge on its own does not necessarily mean that we should scrap Trident straight away, but it's certainly part of what will be a much more complex deterrence environment of the future. And I think this puts particular pressure in the UK case on minimum deterrence postures and reliance on just one submarine. And then finally, and perhaps this is something we can explore more in the Q&A, while cyber is a major challenge, we shouldn't see it in isolation. A whole new suite of technologies being developed by many actors, missile defences, precision weapons, and many other things, including space as well, when taken together present a considerable challenge and a whole new range of questions, I believe, when the next boats begin being deployed in over a decade's time. Thank you.